Evening, everyone. It's nice to see everyone in their boxes. It's 5/19, June 15th, and this is the meeting of the San Diego Water District Board of Directors, and I'm going to call this meeting to order. And Kathy, can we do a roll call?
Yes. Board Member Hinsey?
Here.
Board Member Kranz?
Here.
Board Member Lines?
Here.
Vice President Blakespear?
Here.
And President Mosca.
I'm here.
Record will show all members of the board are present.
All right, please join me in a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. There are no special presentations. Do we have any oral communications?
I have two attendees. One is the appellant. Does anyone wish to speak? Please raise your hand under oral communications. This is for items not listed on the agenda. We do not have any oral communications.
Thank you. And we didn't have a closed session, so we don't have anything to report from closed session. Are there any changes to the posted agenda?
There are no changes to the posted agenda.
All right. And then consent calendar. Any changes to the consent calendar?
Any speakers, public speakers wishing to speak on the consent calendar, please raise your hand. This is for the San Diego Water District. No hands are raised.
Kathy, did you want to say that little blurb that you usually say at the beginning about the stipend?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Thank you for that. Please note that San Diego Water District members do receive an independent stipend for calling the San Diego Water District meetings to order pursuant to San Diego Water District Resolution number 89-07.
All right, thank you. So we have 5 items on the consent calendar. If no member of the board wants to pull any of the items for questions or comments, then I'll entertain a motion for the entire consent calendar.
I'll move approval.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Let's vote.
Board Member Hinsey?
Yes.
Board Member Kranz?
Yes.
Board Member Lines?
Yes.
Vice President Blakespear?
Yes.
And President Mosca.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. That does take us to our first action item, 10A. And Karen, if you could please promote Craig Stewart to a panelist. Thank you.
All right, 10A is a hearing to consider customer appeal of district denial for revised water bill for 1153 Crest Drive. And we have some processes that we will follow just to kind of set the table, let you know. So staff is going to give a report, and then I'm going to ask all my fellow board members to disclose any information that they've received that's not included in the staff report. Then we'll have preliminary questions, and then I'll open it up to the public. And then the appellant applicant will have 10 minutes for a presentation, and then public speakers, and then a rebuttal by the applicant appellant for 5 minutes, and then we'll close the public hearing. If there are no questions to that, I'll turn it over to Mary for a staff report.
Okay. I'll take a moment to share my screen. Can you all see that? Okay, I will get started. Thank you, President Mosca and members of the board. The item before you is a customer appeal to the district for denial of his revised water bill.
Mary, just so you know, we can see your notes. I'm not sure if it matters or not.
Okay.
Just wanted to alert you to that.
Okay, hold on. Let me remove those. Just bear with me for a moment. that better?
That's good.
Good, perfect. Okay. So on the morning of November 22nd, district staff, as part of the ongoing replacement of equipment reaching the end of its useful life, replaced a water meter register at the customer's address. A total of 44 registers were replaced on the same day, 4 on the same street as the appellant. About a month later, the customer, along with others in his billing cycle, was issued a bill for the 2-month period of October 11 through December 13, 2021. On December 27, the customer contacted the district and requested a meter audit or bill adjustment, believing that his bill had been generated in error, as his normal bill, and I quote, averages 1/3 of the billed amount. No other complaints or inquiries were received from any customers on the billing cycle or any that had had their equipment changed out. A field technician was sent to reread the meter and to pull information from it in the form of a meter profile. The profile revealed that there was constant water flow on the property from November 22nd through December 18, hence the larger than normal water bill. The customer was provided with the profile report and possible causes of the constant flow, mainly a leak due to a broken sprinkler or a stuck toilet flapper. He was also advised of the district's leak adjustment process, which can be initiated once the leak has been fixed by the homeowner and receipts submitted to the district. This slide is a snapshot of the profile that was pulled from the meter. I'd like to draw your attention here to the time that the meter was exchanged by the district staff. Normal reads were about 5 hours, and then at 3 p.m., about when the leak began to register. This slide shows the constant flow as well as the spiked use from the customer's irrigation system when it would come on during the day. The customer's irrigation was said to run every other morning at 7 a.m. and amounting to about 1,639 gallons on this particular day. This slide captures the data. The constant flow of the water stopped at about 1 p.m. on December 18. Excess water use was at its highest every other day from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. when the irrigation was taking place. On the last day of the constant flow, the irrigation alone amounted to 1,662.4 gallons, which is the first 2 lines on this slide. In January, the customer formally appealed to the district finance manager, requesting that his bill be based on an average of the previous 5 years. He cited the malfunction of district equipment as the basis for his appeal. The appeal was denied and communicated to the customer via certified mail and via email when the certified mail was returned by the post office as undeliverable. In the denial letter, the customer was also advised of an independent third-party meter testing he could request, as well as the process to appeal the district staff decision to the board. The customer did request the independent third-party meter testing, and while that was being scheduled, he submitted the appeal that is before the board today. On March 15, an attempt was made to test the meter at the customer's residence. The test required that the customer turn off all water to the residence. The customer was unable to guarantee that all water was turned off. Therefore, the meter was pulled from the location and taken to an independent test facility in Hammett. A report of the testing was provided to the customer, showing that a weighted accuracy came in at 99.697%, and it also matched the tester's calibrated meter. For reference, I'd like to show you pictures of the meter, which is this one, the transponder, and then the register as well. This is the equipment that's used by the district to obtain data that we then use to bill the customers. The accepted industry standard for meters is 96% to 102%. If the meter is shown to overread, the district will replace the meter, adjust the customer's bill, and issue a refund. If it underreads or falls within the acceptable range, the district normally charges the customer $50 for the additional staff time that goes into profiling and testing, and then the customer is required to pay the bill in full. After the initial consideration of the appeal at the April 20th meeting, the customer did contact the district to discuss possibly fixing a toilet so as to be eligible for the district's leak adjustment process. The customer was informed that if he also submitted an application and receipts for the leak adjustment, that would make him eligible for the credit. He was also advised that the maximum amount of the credit he would receive would be in the amount of $543.55. The customer informed the district that he would proceed with the appeal to the board based on the district not showing a good faith effort to resolve the issue. I will now take a few minutes to explain how the leak adjustment credit is arrived at for each customer. No water is given for free to any customer. When a customer is eligible for a leak adjustment credit, we begin by calculating the average consumption over the same period for the previous 3 years. In this case, we took into consideration the customers' bills from October to December of 2018, 2019, and 2020, and came up with an average of about 58 units of usage. We then subtract the result of the units consumed on the bill in question from the average. So in this particular case, he had 238 units of usage. We subtracted the 58 to arrive at 180 units. So after this point, anything above the average is then adjusted to a tier 2 rate, meaning that the customer will then have to pay a lower rate than the tier 3 or the tier 4 rate that he had normally been billed for. For this customer, this resulted in a maximum credit of $543.55. I would now like to illustrate a point by explaining the district's method for collecting water consumption data. The district uses AMR, or automatic meter reading, which can either be drive-by or walk-up technology. AMI technology is used by some agencies and does not involve any driving or walking by. The consumption data is remotely collected via an integrated system of equipment that communicates via a network. The point I'm making here is that on 3 separate meter reading dates, both the reads that were collected manually by walking up to the meter and via AMR transmission matched exactly, as will be seen on the next couple of slides. The top of this slide shows the transponder reading transmitted from the customer's meter on December 13 of 2021. This also happened to be the normal read date for the customer's cycle, and the information was used to bill him for the water usage for October through December period. Below it is a snapshot of the customer's meter profile, which was obtained from manually reading his meter or from pulling the profile. And you'll note that there's 188 there, 181, and what's highlighted in blue is the 181.47. And what we normally do is we take the first 3 digits and use that as the reading. A similar exact match was found this time on February 14 at the end of his next billing cycle. And then the same thing, it shows 255 from the transponder and 255 from the meter profile. Also note that this particular reading was taken prior to the customer requesting the meter register testing, which occurred on March 15th. And then this is lastly, this is the end of the billing cycle for his most recent billing cycle, which was April 11th. And again, another exact match of 378 from the transponder and 378 from the meter profile. What these three slides are trying to show is that there was no malfunction of the equipment. Whatever reading we got from the transponder exactly matched what was on the register. In addition, the customer has contended that the transponder was defective and needed to be disregarded. So even if we disregard the transponder, the meter is still accurate. It still gave us the same reading. On this slide, we show the consumption during a leak versus non-leak occurrences at the customer's address, and also during irrigation and non-irrigation times. I'd like to draw your attention to the lower three items, which show a one-day leak on March 24th to the 25th. The highlighted entry is a leak that the customer himself acknowledged after it was brought to his attention by a neighbor. It's important to note that on reviewing the profile for this particular leak, it matched the characteristics of the October through December leak, but this one only lasted 11 days. The last item here shown is just normal irrigation without any leak. In conclusion, staff recommends that the board should deny the customer's appeal and the customer be required to pay the entire unrevised bill. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available to answer questions.
Thank you so much for that presentation. I'm now going to ask each one of my colleagues on the board of directors to disclose any information that they've received outside of what is contained in the staff report. And I'm going to start with Board Member Kranz. Do you have anything additional to disclose?
Nothing to disclose.
Board Member Lyons?
I just will disclose that I did meet with staff for a little bit more detail on the history of use. I didn't see that presented in the staff report, but just wanted to report that.
Thank you so much. Board Member Hensey?
Nothing to disclose.
Vice President Blakespear?
I have nothing to disclose.
All right, and I have nothing to disclose as well for the record. Now we're going to move to the moment for preliminary questions by the Board of Directors. Do we have any questions? Not hearing anybody and not seeing any hands. I'm going to now open the public hearing. I don't have a gavel, but I'll pound on my desk. The public hearing is now open, and the appellant applicant, Mr. Stewart, I believe, I see him there on his camera. You get 10 minutes to present your side.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. I still do not believe that the Water District has proven that the register and transponder were not faulty. She just now indicated that there was a leak in March, which I acknowledged, that was an irrigation valve. And she said that it exactly matched the same leak pattern from November, December. Now, that leak in March was reported by my neighbor within a day of it occurring. It would be absolutely impossible for that same exact leak to occur on my property for 21 days and not have a neighbor notice it or I notice it. So whatever happened in March is a unique event that cannot be connected to the November, December event. It cannot. So I still do not believe that they proved that their device read in error after it was installed. Now, the second part is at the last meeting, city council meeting or board meeting, I was advised to mitigate or try to resolve the issue directly with the water district, which I did. And as she mentioned, what they're offering to do is reduce the bill by $543.55 if I agreed to repair a leak that doesn't exist. So I was going to play along and repair a toilet that isn't leaking, hasn't been leaking, but I can hire a plumber and repair it. And they're telling me that's the best they could do is $543.55, which I found to be unacceptable, which is why I waited for this hearing today. I have nothing else to add except that I have tried since December to work with the water district to get this resolved. And it seems to me like their response, as she just said, is tough. You owe us the whole bill. We're not doing anything. So, it's up to the council. I don't know what you guys could do or can't do. I'm completely dissatisfied with the way this has all worked out. I still have not had anybody prove to me that any water leaked on my property. There's no physical evidence of it leaking. It just didn't happen. And I have nothing else to add but that. That's all I can do.
All right, thank you, Mr. Stewart. I'm now going to ask the city clerk or the board clerk if there's any members of the public that would like to comment on this item.
If there's any members of the public that would like to comment on this item, please raise your hand, and the comments are restricted to this item, item 10A. There are no speakers on this item. President Moss.
Right. Staff, did you want to respond to any claims that were made or anything that Mr. Stewart said?
I'd like to point out that we think it's very possible that a leak could have happened during that period that is in question, because, and Mr. Stewart says that he did not see anything, but then communication that we had with him indicated that there was times that he was at home and there was times that he was not there. So it's possible that he might not have seen the leak during the time that he was away, which was the lengthiest period of time. The leak lasted about 3 weeks. And we do have an email from him that indicates that sometime in December, he and his, I assume his family were gone from the property. So it's possible that during that time, the leak was happening and that he did not see it.
All right.
That's not accurate.
All right. Any other information, staff, that you want to present? Not hearing anything else. I will move. I guess the applicant appellant has an opportunity for rebuttal. Did you want to say anything else, Mr. Stewart? You have 5 minutes if you wanted to say anything else.
Just one more thing. I was at the house from the date that they alleged that the leak started. I was there until I believe I did not leave the property until the first week in December. The leak stopped. I don't remember the exact date, but for the 21 days that the leak supposedly happened, I was there for at least 15 of those days, at least. And I was home because I had heart surgery in October, so I wasn't even working. I was on the property all day from where the leak supposedly started, at least until the beginning of December. So again, that's a non-issue, because if the leak started on December 21st or November 21st or November 18th, I don't remember which day exactly now. I was there and I was on the property, and if there was a leak, I would have known. If it was a toilet, I would have heard it. If it was a sprinkler valve, would have saw it. neighbor would have saw it. There would be water running down into my neighbor's property. So again, I was there. I was there for the majority of the time, 24 hours a day, not leaving the house, and I would have known there was a leak. That's all I have to add.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. I see staff has their hand raised. Did you want to say anything?
Yes, Mr. President Mosca. I just want to reiterate something Mary said. She was talking about, oh, no, I didn't want to do that. I'm sorry. She was talking about the meter and the register and the transponder, all different separate units. He claims that the transponder malfunctioned and it wasn't correct. The meter was tested with the register. Even if the transponder was to malfunction, the register is tested and it's safe. The register does not move by itself. It won't calculate or read by itself. It communicates with the transponder. The transponder does not control the register. So take out the transponder from the equation and you got the meter and the register, and that is the correct read on there.
All right. Thank you so much. All right. Well, I'm going to close this public hearing and then move to board discussion and action on this item. And I see Board Member Lyons has her hand up, so I'm going to call on her first.
Thank you, President Mosca. I'll just state my thoughts and then open it up for other board members' thoughts. I believe that we all approach this from the perspective of helping our residents and our customers as much as possible. So I like to, and I believe I have looked at this in that regard, but I also know that we do have a policy that we cannot gift our customers, as was articulated just earlier in the presentation, something of value. So what I also have experience with irrigation design, and so I understand how meters work. I come to this with a knowledge of that, and I've really interrogated this data from that perspective to see how could water have been acknowledged going through the meter, unless you have to mechanically have water go through a meter for it to be acknowledged by the register. And I don't see any other way that this could have happened. I do believe that water did go through the meter. And so I'm trying to break it down into the technical aspects of how meters work. I think we interrogated whether the meter is functioning correctly. I think we followed our process on that. I trust that our process is accurate and that the information we received, that the meter was not faulty and the register was not faulty, is accurate. I think I end up with the conclusion that it's a mystery what happened to that water that went through the meter. However, knowing landscapes and landscape irrigation, I know sometimes this happens where there's not evidence on the surface where the water is going, but there can be leaks. I think there's an opportunity for the applicant or the appellant, I'm sorry, to exercise his right to the leak adjustment. There's an opportunity to look at to evaluate the irrigation system for its efficiency, and I know that our water district provides connection to a free service to evaluate an irrigation system for efficiency and point out if there are some leaks. And so I would really be in favor of this applicant considering that option to apply for the leak adjustment and use the services of our free service to evaluate the efficiency of his irrigation system. And I just want to conclude by saying that I asked staff for some detailed information on what are our policies? Are our policies appropriate? Did we notify the appellant as we applied our policies? Are we looking at the efficiency of that meter exactly the way our policies state? And I ended up concluding that we did follow everything appropriately. I'd just like to try to help this appellant as much as possible, but I'm not seeing, I am seeing that water did go through the meter. Thank you.
All right, not seeing any hands up, I'm going to just jump in and say that I am in agreement with Board Member Lyons with her sentiment and analysis as well. I too have looked into this and have reviewed the facts and talked to staff about it. And what I'm convinced of is the fact that the water went through the meter. I don't know what happened to the water, but I'm not sure that I need to know what happened to the water. I know the water is on Mr. Stewart's side of the meter. It went through, it's on his side of the meter. And I think it's not necessary for me to understand what happened on that with that water. Although I'm very sensitive to what Board Member Lyons said, which is that we want to help our customers and we ultimately want to conserve and make sure that that water, precious water, is not being leaked and that it is being used in a productive way and we're conserving as much as possible. So we want to make sure that that we're encouraging customers to trace down leaks and to take advantage of programs that we have in place. And so I'm more inclined to affirm the staff's decision, deny the appeal, and ensure that the customer continues to have access to the leak adjustment program, because I think that that's a good program and it does encourage us to ensure that customers are tracing down any leaks that may exist. If there are no other comments or questions or thoughts being shared, I will make a motion. My motion would be to affirm the staff's decision and to deny the appeal and ensure that the customer has access to the leak adjustment program. Do I have a second on that motion?
Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second. If there are no other comments, I'll ask the board clerk to take a roll call of the votes.
Board Member Hinsey,
Yes.
Board Member Crayons,
Yes.
Board Member Lyons,
Yes.
Vice President Blakespear,
Yes.
and President Mosca.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Stewart, and hopefully you'll, Mary, if you can get in contact with Mr. Stewart and you guys can work together on anything he's entitled to in terms of the leak adjustment program.
Absolutely.
All right. Let's move to item number 10B, which is the introduction and adoption of fiscal year 2022-2023 San Diego Water District budget, second year revise, and our finance manager, Mary Kazuka, has this one.
Okay, if you'll give me a moment to share my screen.
And if any members of the public are wishing to speak on this item, please raise your hand and we will call you during public comment portion.
Then you can see my notes again. Okay, give me a moment.
I'm sure your notes are all nice and polite, so, but I always want to alert people to that.
Thank you.
Not that I put bad things in my notes. They're always good things.
Are you able to see that? No? Let's try this again. Can you see that?
We can see it, and your notes are present as well, but I have no problem with it if you have no problem.
I can share it for you, Mary.
Thank you. Shall I unshare? Okay.
We can see it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, board members. The item before you is the approval of the district's fiscal year 22-23 budget, also known as the second year revise. Karen, I'll let you know. Perfect. The board approved the original fiscal year 21-22 and 22-23 two-year budget of the June 16, 2021 meeting. Because a lot can change from the time the budget is originally presented, the second year revise process allows for updates and changes to be made to the second year of the two-year budget. During the revised process, staff brings recommendations for changes to revenues, expenses, and capital projects, and then adjusts net positions and interfund transfers accordingly. Next slide. Staff is not proposing any revenue revision at this time. The proposed revenue of $21.5 million was presented by staff when the two-year budget was introduced last year. Next slide. On the expense side, revisions requested by staff include increases in 5 and a decrease in 1 expense category for a net increase of approximately $425,000. The increases are in salaries, benefits, potable water purchases, materials and supplies, and the internal cost allocation. Salary and benefit expenses include potential and anticipated increases in labor agreements, employee health, cafeteria, and opt-out insurance plan formulas based on the CalPERS San Diego region, and the replacement of the city's self-funded short-term disability income protection program with traditional sick leave for the employees. Water purchase cost increases reflect guidance on anticipated rate increases from the San Diego County Water Authority, as well as recently identified repairs to Lake Hodges. Materials and supplies will increase slightly due to funding the annual maintenance of closed-circuit television cameras and equipment installed at the Encinitas Reservoir. The internal cost allocation, which are payments for city services that are provided internally, are being trued up to the true 4% increase rather than the 3% increase that had been originally anticipated. A general realignment of district tasks that are performed in-house versus those contracted out has resulted in a net decrease of $500 in the contracts and services category. Next slide, please. Staff is not proposing any revisions to the CIP previously presented in June of last year. $3.2 million was recommended for the CIP, which also includes a new asbestos pipe repair project. If approved, there'll be a nearly equal split of appropriations between the joint facilities projects, which will be 51.3% of the budget of the CIP budget to a tune of $1.6 million, and 48.7% for district projects, totaling $1.5 million. Next slide, please. Contributions to the fleet fund are based on a 7-year replacement schedule, and a vacuum trailer had been identified for replacement at an approximate cost of $150,000. Due to the continuous maintenance and regular assessment of the fleet, the district is able to extend the life of vehicles, and replacements occur only when vehicles and equipment are past their useful lifespan and are not able to function safely or efficiently. As a result of the recent assessment, the replacement of the vacuum trailer has been delayed, and staff is instead proposing to replace Unit 236, which is a 2004 Ford truck that has reached the end of its useful life. In keeping with the city's climate action plan, staff expects to replace this unit with an electric vehicle whose $82,000 purchase cost has been funded through prior scheduled contributions to the fleet fund. The reduction in requested appropriations is to reflect the replacement of a vehicle rather than a larger piece of equipment. Next slide, please. The following is an updated schedule of revenues, expenses, transfers, and projected balances listed by fund, based upon the revisions that are proposed in this report. As of the media report, the district is projected to begin FY 22-23 with an overall net position of slightly over 13 million, with projected revenues of 21.5 million and expenditures of 22.4 million. An appropriation from available net position of about 862,000 is projected, which will result in an overall ending net position of 12.1 million. Next slide, please. I also wanted to discuss some anticipated revisions that might occur later in the year. As you may know, most rates from the San Diego County Water Authority are based on a calendar year basis. Because the Water Authority Board is set to adopt final rates and charges for calendar year 2023 at its June 23rd meeting, this revise was developed using rate guidance that was provided by the Water Authority staff. If there are any significant changes that may affect appropriations, they will be brought to the board's attention as adjustments in the first quarter budget report, which will happen sometime in November or December of this year. Last slide, please. Staff is therefore recommending that the board adopt Resolution 2207, which will approve the district's operating and capital budget, and also approve Resolution 22-8, which will adopt the district's 22-23 position titles and pay ranges. This is a requirement from CalPERS that public agencies maintain an approved and publicly available schedule that identifies all positions and salary ranges. By approving this resolution, this will satisfy the CalPERS requirement. This concludes my presentation, and I'm available to answer questions you may have.
Thank you for the presentation. Any questions? Kathy, Board Member Krantz?
I don't have a question, but I did want to take the opportunity to really applaud the staff, especially the maintenance staff, for the fact that we're just now reaching the end of the useful life of a 2004 vehicle. So 18 years out of a truck is pretty doggone good. I know that we, mostly drive it around town, but everybody should be commended for making a vehicle last that long, and appreciate you looking out for taxpayer resources in that way. And I would move staff recommendations to approve this mid-year adjustment.
Before I call for a second, I just wanted to ask Kathy if we have any public comment on this item.
I do not see any hands raised. One last time, if you wish to speak on this item, which is the budget for the San Diego Water District, please raise your hand. There are no speakers.
All right, so we have a motion on the table by Board Member Krantz. Do we have a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Perfect. So we have a motion and a second, and I just wanted to also just commend staff for the budget and for the presentation, and for just for really looking out for the ratepayers and the taxpayers of our city. Thank you.
Board Member Hensy?
Yes.
Board Member Krantz?
Yes.
Board Member Lyons?
Yes.
Vice President Blakespear?
Yes.
And President Mosca?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Excellent. Let's move to the last item on the agenda, on the action item agenda, public hearing regarding San Diego Water District's 2021 Public Health Goals Report. And this is going to be led by Water Operations Manager Gonzalez.
And before you start, if any members of the public wish to speak on this item, please raise your hand, and then we will call you after staff presentation.
Thank you, President Mosca and members of the board. Tonight, Tonight's item before you is the San Diego Water District's 2021 public goal report. Public notice for this item was sent out prior to tonight's meeting for public comment. With us tonight for our presentation, we have Brett Kelly, water quality analyst for RE Badger filtration plant.
Thanks, Raul, and if we can get the presentation going. Perfect. So yeah, right now we're going to be talking about the public health goal report. So this is a report that we're required to release every 3 years. So the data covered in this presentation is covering 2019, 2020, and 2021. So public health goals, we're having a little slide difficulty. Perfect. Okay, so public health goals are something that are created by the California EPA Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment. They're the level at which a chemical has no known or expected risk. And these are created by the Environmental Health Hazard Assessment Office by basically looking at current scientific literature. And these are very idealized numbers, but they are not regulatory standards. Good, next slide. So what is regulatory standard is something called the MCL, or maximum contaminant level. And this is something that's created by the EPA and the California Water Resources Control Board, Division of Drinking Water. And basically, the Division of Drinking Water takes a look at the public health goal that is set, but then they also take into account the economic feasibility of meeting these goals and also the technological feasibility of available treatment options to seeing basically what level is reasonable to meet from a legal perspective. So although MCLs will be higher than public health goals, they're still established at very conservative levels. And as long as a chemical is detected below the MCL, it's still considered safe. And so luckily, every year, all the chemicals that we test for are at levels below the MCL. On that note, there are sorry, we're wrong slide is in here, but there's actually 3 chemicals for this year's public health goal report that were detected above the public health goal. The first is arsenic, and arsenic is reported in units of parts per billion. So the public health goal is very low, 0.004 parts per billion. We detected a level of 0.18. However, the maximum contaminant level is 10.0. Some of the health effects of arsenic above maximum contaminant level is that it can be a carcinogen. Arsenic is actually naturally occurring in the Earth's crust. So it is naturally occurring in our source water that is treated at the treatment plant. Next chemical detected above the public health goal is chloride. It's analyzed in units of parts per million. The public health goal is 0.05 for chloride. And throughout this period, we detected an average level of 0.46 with an MCL of 1.0. Chloride, if above the MCL, can basically, it can be hemotoxicity and neurotoxicity, which means it can affect the blood and brain. Although chloride is actually beneficial to keep at a residual level below the MCL within the distribution system, because one of the things it can do is it can prevent microbial growth from basically forming biofilms in the distribution system, which can actually cause further health hazards. And the final contaminant detected above the public health goal is hexavalent chromium. It uses units of parts per billion in its analysis. The public health goal is 0.02. It was detected at a level of 0.048. And hexavalent chromium is actually, it's an interesting contaminant because it's currently unregulated. So there's no MCL at this time. However, they're in the process of creating an MCL for it. And the MCL proposed is 10.0. Basically, the Water Resources Control Board is in the process of holding public hearings to create this MCL. And it actually 10.0 was the MCL in place a couple of years ago before they ran into legal trouble setting it properly. But again, we detected 0.048, which is well below the level of 10.0 for the proposed MCL. And hexavalent chromium is also naturally occurring in source water, just like arsenic. And it also is a possible carcinogen if detected above the MCL. And part of this public health report is suggesting a best available treatment technology. And we determined based on information on the EPA website that an ion exchange system would be the best available treatment for this. There's calculators available online on the EPA website that determine that installing and operating an ion exchange system at the RA Badger filtration plant would create an annual cost of $1,610,000 per year over the cost of its lifetime. And this is a relatively high cost for a low reward for removing the low levels that exist. And the biggest problem also is that it's not certain that it would remove the chemicals below the public health goals, as these systems have been studied to bring chemicals below the MCL, and we're already achieving that. So it would basically create an unnecessary cost to maybe provide no real benefit. And that's all I have for this report. If there is any comments or questions, now's the time.
Well, thank you so much for that very important report. And we're always very happy to have anybody from RE Badger come and speak with us. We are very, very excited and happy of all the things that you guys do over there and providing us with a local water source. Any questions for staff? Board Member Hensey?
I would be curious to see maybe in a follow-up report what these levels are over time, just to understand if there's some way that we can wrap our heads around the environmental factors that might contribute to changes in the levels of these constituents. And then the second question is, it seems that if there's a recommendation for some type of technology for us to use to lessen these levels, that we should at least look into that. Perhaps there's a grant program or some type of a pilot program that we might be able to take advantage of. I don't know if we've done any kind of that research, but it would be helpful to know.
Okay. Yeah, and I don't know if we've studied actually bringing an ion exchange system at our plant. It is something we could look into in the future, and definitely something that could be worth discussion with our treatment plant manager. And I believe as far as historical levels of these contaminants go, at least looking at the previous public health goal report, when I was preparing this one right here, I do know that arsenic was, one of the things above the public health goal as well. We do test our source water quarterly for these contaminants. So I know that both Lake Hodges and San Dieguito Reservoir, which are our two local source waters for treating, both have levels of arsenic in them. So for example, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but from what I remember, they're approximately triple of what we see in our final effluent water, which is delivered to customers.
Do we find these type of levels of iron in other reservoirs like Olevenheim?
That is something I didn't look into when I prepared this, but it's absolutely something I can check.
I guess I'm just trying to understand to Board Member Hensey's point, the technology, whether it's been adopted by other agencies and what their experience has been with that technology. I agree for the level of iron and for the amount of money and not knowing how much it would decrease. It seems like a lot of money, but public health is obviously extremely important. And so we need to understand more about how this technology could actually help us decrease it. And also just from a historical perspective, has the iron always existed, and has does it go up and down from different years? Is this something that's part of the runoff contained in some of the runoff of Escondido, or how does it get into that watershed?
Oh, I hear you saying iron. I think, do you mean arsenic?
Or the technology that we were talking about adopting that would cost about $1 million a year for its lifetime, was that regarding?
Ion exchange.
All right, but it was regarding arsenic.
Yes.
All right, perfect. All right. So I guess the larger point was that I agree with Board Member Hinsey in terms of the need for due diligence to understand whether it would be necessary.
Absolutely, yeah. It's definitely something I could bring up to with our plant manager and see if it's something worth investigating in the future. But yeah, from my research, I didn't see any indication that it's has effectiveness of bringing it below the public health goals. But it could be worth further research, absolutely.
What about the Santa Fe Irrigation District Board of Directors? Have they raised any issue with that?
I have not prepared a public health report for our district yet. And I haven't heard anything from them, but I've not talked to them about that yet.
Great. Okay. Board Member Hinsey, Board Member Kranz.
Yeah. How are we conducting this testing? Is it at the Badger filtration plant, or is it where in the system are we drawing water in order to conduct these tests?
Yeah, so the tests that we're analyzing, these are the effluent, basically at the point of leaving the filtration plant. That's the plant effluent that we test. There are some tests as well that are conducted throughout the distribution system. So actually the data that I use for chloride is our representative locations throughout the distribution system. Some locations closer to the plant, some locations further from the plant. So yeah, chloride is derived in that way, but the arsenic and hexavalent chromium tests are from the direct plant effluent. And as far as I'm aware, that's basically something in the regulations that determines whether you take it at the plant or from the distribution system for specific tests.
All right. Looks like we don't have any more questions by the Board of Directors. So I'm going to ask the Board Clerk, do we have any questions or comments from the public?
No, we do not.
All right, then I'm going to bring it back to the Board of Directors. Any final comments? If there are none, this is a receive and file. All right, well, thank you so much for the presentation, and you've received our input. And we're done. So we'll move on to the next item on this. Obviously the Tarquin, you just came on. Did I do everything proper in terms of the hearing? So the hearing is closed.
The hearing is closed. I've been on the entire time. I set my video off.
Right.
Your procedure was perfect.
All right, perfect. All right. All right, so we're done with 10C. We've received and filed that and closed the public hearing. So we're going to move to 11, which is information area items. We don't have any information items to share at this time. Number 12 is board member reports pursuant to AB 1234. Anybody, any board member have anything to report? Not seeing any hands or anybody shouting at me. We're gonna move to general information, general manager update report. Do we have one?
Thank you, President Mosca. I did have one prepared, however, to be sensitive for time since we are reaching 6:20, I will defer to the next board meeting to give a general manager's update.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Christina. Let's, all right. So we're at the end of our agenda and there's no more items. So we are adjourned.
Okay, let me just quickly ask, is it okay if we jump over to the next meeting, everyone? We have a huge agenda, or do we need a little break? Okay, let's jump to the next meeting.